so fresh, looking so fresh. When I walk by, breaking their necks. Waiting in line at the team store. Now I'm feeling fly like a condor. Eyes on me when I walk through the door. Man, I wish I bought a couple more. Cause I really love my city. It was worth every penny. If it were at my show, then I know they gon' tip me. Think I might add a couple patches. If you think it's ugly, you capping. Now my whole outfit matching. Never going out of fashion.
What's up, everybody? Welcome episode 653, Talking Friars podcast and YouTube show. Ben Fadden with you here. It is October 25th, 2024. Next up, it is the bullpen season review. I did the starting rotation season review earlier this week. And so hopefully everybody is enjoying that or has enjoyed that if you watched or listened to that. But yeah, let's get right into the bullpen. Here, we got Robert Suarez today, and then Tanner Scott, Jason Adam, Jeremiah Estrada, Adrian Morejon, Bryan Hoeing, Yuki Matsui, Alek Jacob, and Wandy Peralta. I think yesterday, looking back at yesterday's show, I think I was dragging it on a little bit long, so I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker with each of these guys, and hopefully you guys will like and appreciate that as well. So let's start with Robert Suarez, a .9 F.WAR in 65 innings in the regular season, 2.77 ERA, 1.046 WHIP, 59 strikeouts, 16 walks, 7 home runs allowed, 0 hit by pitches, and his baseball savant was pretty darn good. The velocity's there, obviously. He has the strikeout stuff, and I know that there's probably going to be fans that are going to think of Robert Suarez as 2024 and be like, don't know. Is he going to be a dominant closer next year for the Padres? Because I feel like sometimes as fans, we remember the bad stuff more than we do all of the times that a reliever was good, especially when it comes to relievers. And I know some were doing that with Yuki Matsui this year, and maybe I'll get to that here in a little bit when we get to Yuki. But with Suarez, I think overall we have to look at what he did in the big picture this year. And in the big picture, in the postseason, he pitched well. In the regular season, for the most part, he pitched well. Not every reliever is going to pitch well every time out. That's just, you're going to have your hiccups. And it looked like at the time, unfortunately, it was coming in September. And so, when Suarez was about to come in games, or fans, because I was at Petco, fans saw Suarez warming up, and it was like, oh no, Suarez coming to the game. But overall, it was a strong season from Robert. His first 21 appearances had a .40 ERA. Obviously got to his first All-Star game, so that was cool to see. What sucked was, Big Papi was interviewing random guy, I forget who he was even talking to, in that AL dugout while Robert Suarez was pitching. So, of course, it was a Padre that was on the mound dominating when that was happening. So that was frustrating. But for being a one-pitch reliever, maybe that's not fair to say to him about him, but I mean, he's someone that it was a lot of one pitch. The fastball, you pretty much knew what was coming. 71% of the time, it was a four-seamer, 16% sinker, 13% changeup. Now, it was effective when he was able to locate that four-seam, and it was averaging 99.1 miles per hour. The sinker was at over 98, almost 99. So you have a little bit of movement there. And that's what I'm looking at with Robert Suarez going into next year. I thought that they were able to work at the end of using the changeup, use another pitch other than the four-seam and the sinker to make guys at least think that, oh, maybe another pitch is going to come. Make it into their thought process, because there were times where hitters would just sit fastball. And when he was kind of struggling there, sit fastball, you're going to get a pitch to hit, go hit that pitch. And guys were able to do that. So yeah, that's really what I'm looking at for next year with Robert. I'm confident. The postseason for me and how he was able to adjust there, that made me confident in Robert Suarez going into next year. And he still has the velocity. And again, I think overall we should look at the sample size and be like, yeah, overall, he was one of the best relievers in baseball last year. One of the best closers for sure. I know you could look at other guys like Emmanuel Clase, who pitched great in the regular season, but then come postseason time, there was a little bit of struggle there, you know? Robert Suarez, he did his job. So I don't know about you guys. Let me know in the comments, but I'm confident in Bobby Fastballs. I think that's what some fans call him. I'm confident in Robert Suarez going into next year. For me, again, it's what secondary pitches is he going to work on? Can he locate those pitches? Obviously, some of the negatives were, again, like I talked about, the end of the season there, near the end of the season, September, where there was that outing against Detroit where he gave up the go-ahead grand slam, right? I think he was one strike. I know he was one out away from getting out of that. Dodger Stadium, I know there was the triple play, but he wasn't pitching well in that outing. You know, we were lucky that Manny was positioned where he was, and because that ball wasn't hit soft, it was hit pretty much right at Manny, and they were able to get the triple play. But Shohei was on deck. Things were not going well there, and so luckily they were able to get out of that and clinch that playoff spot. But overall, like for me, again, I just look at the big sample size and I look at what he did in the postseason. He was able to close out that wild card series against the Braves. The game 3 win did his job against the Dodgers. So, you know, big moments, he stepped up. And so, again, I feel confident going into next year with Robert Suarez. And to be honest, with the rest of this bullpen for the most part. And I know some of the parts are going to change, but the bullpen was one of the strong suits of this Padres team this year. And yeah, Tanner Scott, that's going to suck to see him leave. I don't think he's coming back in free agency. But all the other guys, they're under control. Still have Jeremiah Estrada. Still have the guy I'll get to now, which is Jason Adam. I'll get to Tanner Scott as well here. They've got some talent there at the back end. And then we'll see if there's any prospects that come up. There's still Morejon. And, you know, AJ, if we're going to trust AJ with anything, I feel like it's his track record with the bullpen. And I know AJ had a great year all around this past year with the moves and that he and his team made. But specifically the bullpen, just his track record as the Padres GM, I mean, that's probably the area you got to trust him the most. So I feel good about this bullpen. Getting to Jason Adam and Tanner Scott. Jason Adam, his full regular season was 74 outings, 73 and 2/3 innings, a 1.95 ERA, .855 WHIP, 81 strikeouts, 23 walks, 5 home runs, and 6 hit batters. Man, go look at that Baseball Savant, and you're going to see a lot of dark red. And he used his four seam the most, but it was pretty even with the changeup, the slider, the sweeper. I'm telling you, man, that changeup is pretty darn nasty. That sweeper is pretty nasty. I think Jason, he does a really good job. I loved watching him pitch, by the way, when he came over in that trade. And yeah, it was a ballsy move by AJ. Gave up a good amount there. I was not expecting Snelling and Lesko to be gone at the end of that deadline, but maybe I should have, looking back at it, considering who our general manager is. But Jason Adam, man, how deceptive he is and how it is just, I know the podcast audience just won't do anything for you, but how he just snaps it almost, you know? It's hard to pick up, I would imagine, if you're up there at the plate. So loved watching him pitch. I don't really have negatives. I guess game 2 of the wild card, I think that was the only runs that he allowed. He gave up that homer to Michael Harris, but other than that, I mean, it was positive after positive after positive. There was a lot that was given up, like I talked about. Dylan Lesko, Homer Bush Jr., JD Gonzalez for a reliever, but it's a reliever that has control. I think he has 2 more seasons before hitting free agency. 4 of his 5 postseason outings were shutouts. 3 runs allowed in 27 appearances with us. I mean, he was nasty. Pretty darn good. So, yeah, I could totally see him going into that Tanner Scott role in the 8th inning. I think it's going to be Suarez in that 9th inning. Maybe they want Adam to still go 7, and then they want a lefty in between the 2 righties with Suarez and Adam. but there's also Jeremiah Estrada who could jump in there. I mean, it could be 7, 8, 9, Estrada, Adam, and Suarez. And then you have Morejon there too. It's going to be interesting to see how they do that. Part of what made this so sucky obviously every postseason loss, and when you exit earlier than the World Series, it sucks. But because of how good this bullpen was, I mean, going into the postseason, right? I thought the Padres best bullpen. They were set up really well pitching wise. Obviously, this was before the Musgrove injury, but I thought, yeah, set up really well, and you could shorten games with that bullpen because you had, even if you want to take out Morejon, just go to the other guys. You had Estrada, Adam, Scott, and Suarez. You have 4 right there. And not all of them just go 3 outs. You could have Tanner Scott go more than that. You could have Adam go more than that. I think Estrada may have done that too. Suarez, I believe, did. That's not just 4 innings you're covering. You could cover 5 with that. And so I was like, yeah, if they can get past the Dodgers here, they're going to be very hard to beat with this bullpen. And I know that, when you keep throwing the relievers out there, the batters, they get to see those relievers more and they're going to be more comfortable. But how comfortable can you get against a nasty bullpen like the Padres had, So that really does suck. But the good news is a lot of these guys are under control. They'll be back next year. I wish Tanner Scott would be, but again, if we're going to trust anything about AJ Preller, his track record is that he'll go get a nasty lefty to put into that bullpen. So yeah, Jason Adam, I'm going to love watching him pitch a full year with the Padres, hopefully a couple of years. And Tanner Scott, he had a 1.75 ERA full season, 72 games, 72 innings, 1.6 FWAR, 1.125 WHIP, 84 punchouts, 36 walks, 3 home runs, 1 hit by pitch. A lot of red for him, even more red. I mean, go look at his baseball savant, like literally how dominant he was in the pitching category. Everything is red other than walk rate, and then the extension, I guess, that he has on his pitches. 2-pitch pitcher, literally. 4-seam, 59% of the time. Slider, 41% of the time. But when you're a lefty and you're nasty and you have velocity, 97, and then you have a slider that is so nasty from that left side, I mean, do you need more pitches than that? When you're that on, like Tanner Scott was this year, you don't need another pitch. And so, I mean, there's obviously a lot of positives. I think a big thing that we're going to think of looking back on Tanner Scott was, yep, he was the guy that owned Shohei Ohtani. He's the guy that made Shohei Ohtani look ridiculous and uncomfortable, and I want to get out of here. Shohei doesn't look like that against most pitchers, but Tanner Scott made him look like that. He was the Tom Cosgrove for us this year, with Cosgrove against Ohtani the year before. 1 for 10 Ohtani is against Scott in his career. Faced Ohtani the first 3 times I believe that he faced Ohtani, struck him out all 3 times. Obviously, MLB wasn't going to post that. I did, though, just, because I got to give love to our guy. But yeah, I was excited when he came over, and shout out Bryan Hoeing as well. I'll get to him. I was excited, when those guys came over, because it's like, yep, keep adding to this bullpen. This is a World Series bullpen. This is a World Series caliber team. The Musgrove injury, again, obviously that really hurt, and then the offense just wasn't able to do the job there in those last 2 games, games 4 and 5. Yeah, that's again, like I said moments ago, that's what makes this sting, is how equipped they were to go win the World Series with that bullpen that they had. And then they had talent in the rotation even without Musgrove. It was just such a bummer that the offense didn't score. When they had that 2-1 series lead, just couldn't do enough. Scott, he had a 1.57 ERA in his last 24 outings of the regular season. A little bit bumpy his first couple, but I mean, he had a 1.18 ERA going in. So there were obviously high expectations. And again, a reliever, I feel like we remember the bad outings more than the good sometimes. And relievers are not going to have great outings every time out. We expect them to because it's one inning, it's not 5 or 6, but they're not going to. Sometimes they don't have it. They make a mistake. And if a starter makes a mistake, you have a great outing, right? 6 innings, you make one mistake, you had a great outing. You're a reliever and you make one mistake, could end up looking like a really bad outing. So there's obviously a lot on those relievers when they come into those games. And Tanner Scott and Jason Adam, they did really good jobs this year. So I don't like my negatives in my Gaslamp Ball piece for Tanner Scott. The negatives, I literally said he's a free agent. I don't have like negatives for him on the mound. He was a team guy, came over, did whatever was asked. He wasn't demanding the save opportunities. Yeah, again, I could cherry pick a couple of outings in the regular season, but this guy shoved, and it's going to suck that he's not going to be here because he's going to get paid by someone to probably go be their closer. So, congrats to Tanner Scott. It sucks that we couldn't go farther, but he did his job, in my opinion. All right, moving on. Let's go to Jeremiah Estrada. One of the cool stories for the Padres this year, huh? Like, comes over, waiver claim in the offseason, I think, beginning of November last year. Cubs, they allowed him to go. Padres pick him up. Sub-3 ERA, one of the high-leverage guys in this Padres bullpen in the postseason. 1.066 whip in the regular season, 61 appearances, was able to stay healthy, almost 100 punch-outs. No hit by pitches, only 4 home runs allowed. A lot of red on his baseball savant. Got that four-seamer, the slider, the split. He's nasty. 13. Remember this. This is something that may not be talked about a bunch from this year, but should be talked about. The 13 consecutive strikeouts, and some of those guys were Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, guys that are in the World Series, game 1 of the World Series later today. You know, nasty. 98 with the fastball, and then he can get that. He has that nasty slider and the split, like that. And the Padres obviously have him under control for a while. That's going to be a nasty piece. And it seemed like he really loved being in San Diego this year. Really embraced it. Loved the city. So I can't wait. I can't wait to continue to watch him pitch, and hopefully he continues to grow and gets in those bigger spots. I'm really curious about how this bullpen is going to be constructed in terms of like who gets what role. Suarez, again, I think he's going to get the 9th. But then after that, is it going to be Estrada in the 8th? Are they going to go Jason Adam in the 8th? Do they want a lefty in between a couple of righties, and then they have Estrada, because I would assume it would be Adam in the 7th then, and Morejon maybe in the 8th, or whoever they bring in, and then you have Estrada for the 6th? I know you want your starter going 6th, but that could also be a good thing because you have Estrada getting a little bit more rest this year. Or it allows other relievers to get some more rest and not be taxed as much if you have someone like Estrada that can pitch in any situation. I would trust him in the 9th inning. Maybe not every time out, but yeah, I would trust him. Punched out 5 Dodgers in the NLDS, no earned runs. I know he allowed a run, but no earned runs in October. 25. I thought he became a fan favorite, when his name was announced. Petco got pretty loud, so that was cool. The negatives, he allowed that run game 1 of the NLDS, the 7-5 loss. He was asked to relieve Adrian Morejon. Morejon didn't do great, right? He had to come in, I think, with the bases loaded, allowed that hit, but it landed right in front of Jackson. And in my opinion, I thought Jackson should have dove for that ball. Easy for me to say when I'm not in center field in that situation, but just how Merrill played the outfield this season, I felt like he was going to die for that ball and then didn't. It gets down, and the Padres end up losing that game. But I'm not looking at 2024 negatively at all about Jeremiah Estrada. I'm looking at it as, all right, this is a good leaping off point, and can't wait to see what this guy does in 2025. Adrian Morejon, it's the same thing. I love that he was able to stay healthy. 2.83 ERA this year. I hope that whip can get down a little bit. 1.319 is what it was. 71 strikeouts, 1.1 FWAR. Velocity was there. Almost 97 on that fastball. Sinker, slider, four seam, split, and sweeper. So that's a good collection, a good arsenal that he has there. And we knew that this guy was talented. It was just, when was he going to be healthy? Past years, he had to go through Tommy John surgery, knee inflammation, shoulder inflammation, forearm strain. But when he can be healthy and get in a groove and be confident at the big league level, look what he did. At home, he had a 2.40 ERA, never gave up more than 2 runs in any game out of the bullpen this year. I think there's going to be the conversation about, okay, is he going to start? I think it was Kevin Acee or Dennis Lin today. They both had pieces out, so I recommend you go reading them. Kevin did a good job of like summarizing what's ahead for the Padres this offseason. And so one of them mentioned Adrian Morejon. Like, he could get internally, there's going to be talk probably about Adrian Morejon getting the chance to start. Maybe that's dependent upon what moves the Padres make or don't make this offseason. But for me, I'm sticking Morejon in the bullpen. But I'm not going to sit here and be totally closed off to the starting opportunity. Because what if it's easier for the Padres to go get a couple of lefties somewhere out of relief than to go into the starters market, and they work with Morejon, build them up, and see what he can do as a starter. He came off this past year being healthy. Are they willing to see if Morejon can be healthy as a starter and see how that goes? And then if it doesn't go great, you can always put him in the bullpen. So I'm going to be interested in seeing what happens there. Obviously, the negative with Morejon was that postseason game 1 in the division series where he allowed a hit, a walk, loaded the bases, and then, like I talked about, Estrada gave up that hit that dropped in front of Merrill, and it just didn't set the Padres up. You know, you had multiple leads in that game. Big lead, 3-0, and then I think 5-3, and then didn't score after that in the 7-5 loss. So, yeah, that we're going to look back at game 1 because you had, multiple leads, and obviously we could talk about game 4 and 5, but they didn't have leads in those games. They didn't score. Where game 1, I mean, imagine if they would have been up. Well, actually, if they would have won game 1, they could have swept that series because they won game 2 and game 3. So game 1, when you look back at it, man, that was a huge missed opportunity there to go get that. So that sucked to watch because Morejon was someone that I did trust going into that postseason. And, you know, obviously you're not going to have a bullpen give up no runs in the postseason, right? Like some in the Dodgers lineup, they work good at bats. At points, I thought that they worked better at bats than the Padres did. They're going to get on base. They're going to test you. So they're going to score. I think it's unrealistic for us to expect the Padres to shut the Dodgers out with the bullpen as talented as the Padres bullpen is. That's just going to be tough. But it was just disappointing for the free passes, really. That's what bugs me, is the free passes that were given, some of the mistakes. Was it Morejon on the mound with the wild pitch or the pass ball with Higgy behind the plate? I don't know. I forget what they called that. Higgy would probably take accountability, but I think Morejon, if it was Morejon, probably should make a better pitch than that and not yank it. So, yeah, there was just some of the free passes because a run scored there as well. Like, it just, yeah, it's just some of those missed opportunities. But it's kind of like Estrada. It's hard for me to look at this year as a whole for Morejon as a negative because he was able to stay healthy and he was able to produce and be available in the postseason and be he was probably in Mike Schultz. Well, he was, because Schultz really only went to guys that he trusted in those spots unless it was a blowout. He was in that group. So good for Adrian. Bryan Hoeing, that is someone that I didn't know about much when the Padres traded for him. And, you know, I wasn't watching a bunch of Marlins games. So I, like a lot of people, probably viewed Bryan Hoeing as someone that, okay, he'll get an opportunity. It'll be interesting to see what he does. But we were really focused on Tanner Scott. But Bryan Hoeing, in the regular season with the Padres, man, was he good. And it's not someone that's going to get a bunch of national attention or anything like that, but he was still very valuable for this Padres team. His full regular season had a 2.18 ERA in 53 and 2/3 innings, 1.062 WHIP, 43 punchouts, 14 walks, 4 home runs, 0 hit by pitches. Not going to blow you away on Baseball Savant. Like, it's not a bunch of red, but it's effective, right? And for me, I mean, of course you want, like, because usually when you have the fastball, you have the red, a bunch of red, you have nasty stuff that will allow you to get strikeouts, and balls not being put in play, stuff can't happen, right? For that, bad stuff for you on defense, you as a pitching staff. So that's always great. But for me, I mean, I don't care if you throw 75 or you throw 99. I care about, can you locate? Can you get outs, right? Get the 27 outs. That's what matters. Can you get 3 out of the 27 if that's your role? And Bryan Hoeing, for the most part, he was able to do that. Didn't allow a run until his 6th appearance with the Padres. Just 4 earned runs in the regular season with the Padres after being dealt for Miami. And I think, if I remember correctly, that was just a couple of outings where he gave up a couple of runs. And I think of him as maybe a Nick Martinez type for next year, because he could start, but obviously I think most of it would be in the bullpen. So maybe a 2023 Nick Martinez type role. I know Nick Martinez in 22 was in the bullpen as well, so maybe we see that from Bryan Hoeing. Maybe we see that from the left side with Adrian Morejon a little bit. So I kind of put those two guys in that same category. Hoeing's 27. He won't hit arbitration until, I think, 2026. So we've got him. I mean, this was another great job from AJ, because this is someone that the Padres have under control for a while. And we can put him in the bullpen or wherever they want to put him for a while. Seems like a good guy. So, yeah, I'm all on that Bryan Hoeing train. The negatives: allowed 3 earned runs in October. He allowed 2 in that game 4 of the division series, and it was 3-0 when he exited. It was 1-0 when he came in. And, when you think about it, like, I wanted the Padres, obviously, to go win that game, and bullpen game, they'll get to one of these guys, right? The Dodgers relievers, they're not all going to be on their game. But, I mean, it kind of turned out that way. It was a blowout. Wasn't pretty to watch. And when you get down 3-0 like that, Mookie Betts is finding his stroke. It just really, it felt like it obviously dug the Padres into a bigger hole. It made it more difficult for the Padres to come back and do anything in that game. So that was a negative. The homer that he gave up to Will Smith, holy cow, that was a bomb meatball. But he didn't make very many mistakes this year. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do next year in a full season with the Padres. All right, to the last 3, Yuki Matsui, Alek Jacob, and Wandy Peralta. Yuki Matsui, 3.73 ERA, 1.165 WHIP, 69 punchouts, a .3 FWAR this year. Pretty even on 3 pitches. He had a sweeper and curve as well, but 4-seam slider split. The positives: righties hit 196 off of him on the road. Righties in total hit 196 off of him in the regular season. Batters hit 197 off of him on the road when Matsui was pitching on the road. So that's a little interesting split there. And on social media, this is one of those, and I mentioned this earlier, where people remembered the negatives more, I feel like, than they did the positives. Go look at Yuki Matsui's game logs, and there were stretches there where he wasn't giving up runs. And then he'd have a couple of bad outings, and it was like, get Yuki off the team, But I think, and fans, we can fan however we want to fan, right? We're going to be emotional. We're going to react in the moment. But when you look big picture at his season, right? Like, I look at 3 earned run outings. There were a couple of those, right? Kansas City, Anaheim, I think back-to-back. I was at the game in Anaheim. And some wanted him off the team, like then DFA Matsui, right? He went, and then 12 consecutive outings, not allowing any runs. That's just what happens with relievers. And again, I talked about it earlier about starters. They make a couple of mistakes, a mistake, good outing. A reliever does that, and it's a crap outing, right? So, I mean, that's the position that they're in, obviously, and they've got to execute. The negative was like Matsui for the contract that he got. He wasn't in that high leverage group in October. Obviously, it was clear. I mean, just look at what games he was pitching in, what situations it was. But at the same time, it's going to be hard to crack that group of Adam, Estrada, Suarez, Scott, even Morejon in there. Like, that's going to be tough. It is when Tanner Scott is a lefty like you are, when Morejon's a lefty like you are, and you've got the nasty righties. Like, it's just going to be tough. So some of it's on him, some of it's not on him. And it was just Preller he assessed the team, and good for him. He went out and got better relievers to strengthen this bullpen even more. And again, it just sucks so much that they weren't able to go longer this year because of this bullpen. By the way, it was a 5-year, $28 million contract that Yuki Matsui got, and he has an opt-out following not this coming season, but the 2026 season. So that's what I've got on Yuki Matsui there. Alek Jacob, 2.45 ERA, 0.750 whip, 19 punch-outs, only 7 games. Like, there wasn't really enough data to have like this big savant page on him or anything. But this is someone that I am intrigued by. That wanky, is wanky a word? Just the interesting arm angle, right? You don't see that from every pitcher. And I thought that was maybe a little bit of an underutilized weapon in the postseason. I'm not saying you throw him out there in the biggest situation, right? But to end an inning, maybe it means that a reliever pitches an inning, not an inning and a third. I mean, I would have thrown Alek Jacob out there, especially when you could go from like a high velocity arm, and then you go to Alek Jacob, who's throwing, I don't know, what was that pitch? Like 80, 86 on the sinker, has a 74. He's throwing, 73, 72 on the sweeper. That's a big difference, and that could be very effective. You could get some lazy pop-outs with that. So I'm going to be interested in seeing how they use Alek Jacob. I'm going to be interested in seeing how many games he pitches at the big league level this coming season, 2025, because I feel like he was underutilized. And maybe, Schilt would, if he was on the show right now, or Niebla was on, they'd tell me why I'm not the manager, and like they'd have a better reason for me. But yeah, I just felt like maybe he should have been in there a little bit more. He struck out 3+ batters in 5 of his 7 regular season appearances. And yeah, I don't really have a bunch of negatives because there just wasn't this huge sample size on him. To me, it's really with a lot of these guys. I'm excited to see what's going to happen next year for these bullpen arms. And then Wandy Peralta, he was disappointing. A 1-2 whip, less than 40 innings, negative FWAR. Out of the positives, out of all the like reviews I did for pitchers, he was probably the shortest one for positives. Right-handers hit 215 off of him. And I was searching, to be honest. Like, to be fair, I was searching on the splits to see, like, okay, what's a good one to put in here? Because I don't want to just crap on all these guys, because they did, all these guys did help somewhat to get this team to 93 wins, to get them to the postseason. But I was expecting more from Wandy. I was expecting more innings, but obviously he goes on the IL with the adductor strain. He had a sub-3 ERA the last 2 seasons coming into 2024, and he was doing that in a New York Yankee uniform with that big environment. So I thought, I'm not saying the Padres are a smaller environment. I'm saying like it would be, I think we could compare that with the home environment we have. And I was like, all right, yeah, this could be a cool option. He took up less than $5 million in payroll. I think that's one of the positives I put in there. So I guess there's that. But yeah, he has 3 player options left. One next year, I think one in 26 and one in 27. So Preller loves his player options. If that's what gets a player here over another team, he'll give him those player options. If you gave AJ Preller I don't know, what is it called? Truth serum? Is that what it is? If you made him tell the truth on Wandy, did he really want to give Wandy a 4-year deal? 3 player options? Maybe not, but we'll see. We'll see how that's gonna look. How is he gonna perform next year? I want to see him healthier more. It's kind of like a Bogarts thing. Like, I think there's still talent there with Wandy. It just sucks seeing him have that adductor strain and not be able to get back on the horse and try to figure things out. And then obviously when he comes back, there's the bullpen looks different, and he just wasn't going to be pitching in those big important innings. It just wasn't going to happen. So that's what I've got on this Padres bullpen season review. I mean, overall, like, I was encouraged. It was one of the Padres' strong suits. It was a bummer that we couldn't go longer because I thought that would be a big advantage for the Padres, was their bullpen. Looking at the Dodgers with this world, I think Evan Phillips is out for this World Series, but they have Gratterall back. They have Vesia back. They have guys, and I probably wasn't crediting the Dodgers bullpen enough going into that series. I just wasn't locked into Dodger games all year, unless they were playing the Padres, because I just don't like watching that team. So they were talented. They had depth, but the Padres stacked up right with those guys. And against a Yankee bullpen, I would have took the Padres bullpen. Against the Mets bullpen, I would have took the Padres bullpen. So, yeah, just really, again, it's probably for like the 10th time I've said already here in these like 30-plus minutes. Just a bummer that the offense couldn't do enough in those last few games. And we'll look back at game 1, obviously, of the division series, like I talked about with Morejon and Estrada there in those situations. So, yeah, it was just disappointing how that happened there with that series. But before getting out of here, a reminder of some of the great partners of the show: Gaglione Bros, famous cheesesteaks and garlic fries. Their main location is on Friars Road. Check them out. Link is in the description. The phone number, the address. I think they have a menu on there as well. Check them out. Breaking Tea, Padres, Aztecs, shirts and sweatshirts. They got other sports as well. So check them out. Link in the description there. Underdog Fantasy, code Talking Friars. You will get a special pick. You will get a 50% deposit match up to $1,000 on Underdog. And then with SeatGeek, it's the same code, Talking Friars. $20 off your first order there. Alrighty. That's going to do it. I did it shorter today with the bullpen because I felt like I was rambling a little bit yesterday, and I'm trying to work on that. So hopefully you guys appreciate that and you're bearing with me. But yeah, just getting through these player reviews as this World Series is about to get started here. And then we can really get into the off season. So thank you all for the time, and have a great rest of your day and weekend.